Belgium. Wishing him the best of luck. Obviously, a big piece of the NYC, New York City Football Club's run towards an MLS Cup in 2021. And right now, a big part of why they sit at the top of the table in the Eastern Conference in 2022. Wishing him the best of luck. Happy trails. And it appears that Nick Cushing is going to be the who has been a part of the New York City, the NYCFC development camps, and within the academy seems to be the next man on board to assume the head coaching duties. So wishing him
several months later.
Well, we welcome you to episode number 105 of the Primetime Rundown here on the Eastern Observer. Alongside Mike Szabo, Joey Jarzynka here. Mike, that was about 6 months ago, give or take, right? 6 months ago.
It was barely even a thought, Joey.
Yeah, I mean, 6 months ago, it was a lot of talk that, it would just be the two of us for a long time, long time here. We had lost Rob DeLuca. We forgot about one of our guys, I mean, hey, look, I had no hair at the time. You grew up. Yeah, I know. You grew up a little bit. It was a grim time. Yeah, it was wild. But this is what I can tell you. In that little segment there, it was someone by the name of Ian Schraier that played a big part in what we do here today. And he's making his return today. And it kind of hits home. I'm shedding a tear a little bit. You see, it's rolling down here. It's rolling down all the way down. Or maybe that's just a smile. One or the other. I think it's time that it kind of comes back on, like now, right, Mike? What do you think?
Sure.
It's kind of like The Price is Right, like the doors just open and like he just walks out, right? Could be like that.
Behind the prize door, or what is it, door number 3 or something?
No, that's Let's Make a Deal, but yeah, that's close. Well, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we have to welcome back our old friend Ian Schraier because he is here and he is ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Schraier is back with us. It has been way too long. Oh, wait, wrong one. Oh boy, there it goes. And you see the whole thing gets ruined. Ian Schraier is back with us, episode 105. It's been almost 18 or 19 episodes, something like that, if my math is correct. Several months later, you saw it, the SpongeBob time card. Look who's back!
Oh, guys, it's just such a pleasure to be back with the both of you, Joey and Mike, and the rest of our viewers and fans and everybody tuning in through the Eastern Observer. And just so happy to be back. I can't believe it was June 13th, 2022. And then I had taken my 6-month leave as my wife, Christine, and I, we welcomed in our second child to the world, Kayla Marie. And just so happy to have her now part of our family, our little family, now our Schraier family of 4. And in the meantime, while I was gone for those 6 months, as we welcomed our new bundle of joy, I just can't commend Joey and Mike enough on doing the fantastic job that they did. I tried to tune in when I had a free minute or two. Surely wanted to drop a couple of comments, which I know I did for Joey and Mike, especially this summer. Had to do it. Wouldn't it? I mean, I couldn't even come on for episode number 100. And I saw everybody had a great time, and Larry came back, and of course Casey and DeLuca and the two of you, and just can't commend you both on really filling, doing what you needed to do to keep this show running as well as it's been running. And especially for Mike, whose beard and face has become more inevitable than Chris Kreider's. So I couldn't come back and waste the first 5 minutes without dropping a Chris Kreider line in there. But it's just such a pleasure to be back with you both, and I'm real excited to get going.
Oh, man, absolutely. Well, Mike, good to see you, of course. And, I've seen you for however long. My goodness, now you get away for 6 months. Mike, good to see you, sir. How are things on your side of Queens?
Doing well. It's been a very interesting and we'll get into it, but a quite scary week in sports. We'll certainly get into that. Lots to talk about. But the positive, of course, welcome him back, Ian. The world can't be better when it comes to that. So
you see, all good things there, all good things there. But ladies and gentlemen, as always, our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Be sure to download their newest hit single, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us, on all of the music platforms that you could take a peek on. It's Google Play, Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, SiriusXM. Also, all of the music now is actually on SiriusXM too, which is absolutely fantastic for Andrew Giordano and company. So really good things there. Make sure you could download it on all of those platforms. So all good things there here for us. But now let's get into it because there's so much to talk about. Of course, we're going to start in the world of the National Football League. And, on Monday, we saw a scary sight that things, we have not seen in quite a while. And I know Ian, when he was younger, knew about this, and this was before Mike was ever even a thought, before I was even a thought as well. We recall about Reggie Lewis with the Boston Celtics, and he's no longer with us here. He died of a heart complication that he pretty much let go. And we got a chance to see something awfully similar. But thankfully, Bill's safety, Damar Hamlin, is with us here today. After a hit, which looked like a routine hit from T. Higgins after a slant route, in the first quarter, about 10 minutes in, or about 9 or 10 minutes in, Damar Hamlin got up and then he fell down, pretty much collapsed on the ground. There was no movement. There were no signs. There were nothing. And then CPR had to be administered for 9+ minutes. A big kudos goes to the athletic training staff, to the paramedics and everything along those lines to get this young man back up and running, literally, because he was gone for that long. They just kept on pumping his heart. And, he finally, 4 days later, he's awake, not yet speaking, 50% oxygen. And, things are slowly getting back to normal, Ian, which is a nice thing. And again, this is something that we've never seen before in the world of sports, especially this generation.
No, and I was actually on my way home from work when I had heard the news, and it was actually through our group text that I found out about the hit. And I listened to Westwood One's call of what was going on at that moment, which at that time, I believe, Damar Hamlin had just been stretchered off in the ambulance and headed straight for University of Cincinnati Medical Center, where he was taken. And and then I got home and watched 3 endless hours of the same coverage on ESPN that night, which not to incorporate a kudos into this story, but I thought ESPN did such a phenomenal job. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Lisa Salters, Ryan Clark, Scott Van Pelt, the list goes on, of people who were able to it wasn't even about controlling your emotions. We've never seen this on a football field. It was about as routine a hit that you'd see in football. There was no animosity about the hit. There was nothing. I mean, obviously football is a violent sport. It's a dangerous sport. There's nothing about, but we've seen a lot harder hits. But I believe the doctors used the odds that what occurred with Damar Hamlin and the cardio, I
think it's
was the odds were 1, I believe, in 264 million. 1 in 264 million. And there's something to be said for that. And obviously the fact that Damar Hamlin is still on a ventilator, but starting to breathe a little bit more on his own. His eyes are starting to open. He's becoming a little bit more aware of where he is and what he's doing. This man is as I believe it was said today in a press conference, this man has won the game of life. And just everything that's gone into it, to see the country unite, the world unite for a great cause, to see $5 million raised towards his toy drive with regards to raising money for kids who can't afford toys, especially post-pandemic or in underserved communities. Just all these things have just been phenomenal, and really to see that his eyes are opening and he's becoming a little bit aware of where he is just all steps in the right direction for Damar Hamlin and and the Buffalo Bills organization in general.
Ian, you brought up the name of it. So again, this is all unofficial because there's a lot of speculation that it is this. It's not confirmed, but what they are eyeing on and what they're pretty much zooming in on or zoning in on, honing in on. Thank you. I guess that's the best word. Honing in on is commotio cordis, which is a phenomenon in which a sudden blunt impact to the chest causes sudden death in the absence of cardiac damage. Now, from what we've gotten to hear, what we've gotten to see, Mike, what we've heard, all of this is that, it's pretty much your heart is in between beats, is in between whatever it is, and it's literally within a millisecond. If you get hit like this, you are essentially dead. And that's exactly what happened with Damar Hamlin, where when he got up, his heart stopped. That was it. Every single soul in the building they couldn't believe what they saw between their eyes. And I'll be honest, I was working on a project where I saw you guys you guys were texting and everything like that. And I didn't seem to turn around. I was like, all right, I had the TV on in the back, and I wasn't really listening. I was focused on this. And then when I heard this and then I saw it, I pop up on my phone from, different news organizations. I was like, uh-oh, okay, now I think it's best to turn around. This is something big. They didn't resume the game. There's, chances are very high that they're not going to resume the game. We'll get to that in a moment. But Mike, your initial thoughts, this is something that, again, this is a once in a generation type hit that we saw. This is a once-in-a-generation type scenario that we've seen. I know Ian and myself years ago saw this with Chris Pronger. Very similar, if not the exact same thing. Again, this is something that, obviously we never want to happen to anybody. But now in this day and age, it's really freaky to see. What were your thoughts when you saw it?
It's quite scary. We always talk about how football is a violent sport and whatnot, but I think an incident like this always just opens people's eyes to it. It's a violent sport, and again, something that seems so routine exploded into this incredibly dangerous and horrific situation where credit all the medical staff, the athletic training staff, everybody involved that were able to respond in such a quick fashion to be able to save this man's life. And it looks like he's going to pull through. You mentioned all the improvement signs that we've seen in recent days, recent hours. A miracle is the one word you could describe it, because for a long time during Monday night when we were hearing about this, it was not looking good at all. So it's a miracle to this guy that he's able to pull through this. It's an incredible, unbelievable situation that he's in, and it was quite scary. I can't speak, of course. I'm sure it was quite scary if you were there in person. Seeing all of this sort of transpire very quickly, very in the moment. Not too sure what the information was right there instantly. It's quite scary, and you pray for Hamlin's full recovery. It looks like the progress is moving toward there, and you pray for his whole family and everybody in his circle. I can't imagine what that's like to go through, and you're seeing someone suffer like that.
Well, and you know what the best part too is that it just shows also how selfless Damar Hamlin is, because one of the first things that he had asked the doctors via, I believe it was writing it down. I think he wrote it down on a pen. I think I wrote it down on a piece of paper. Was that, did we win the game that night? And that's where Ian had brought up is that no, you won. You won the game of life. Everyone stopped for you. And, it just shows how football is a violent sport. We know it. We've seen it with CTE. We've seen it with a lot of other people that, that are going through things. And life in the forefront there is really what takes precedent there. And, we could have lost him. But again, with all of the work that these athletic trainers and these well-trained medical staffers did that night is truly remarkable to see, and truly an unbelievable sight to see, that they noticed that this was not a run of the mill type injury, that, he was not, he was not breathing. There was no sign. There was no signs there. And, I wouldn't be surprised again. And again, this is all pure speculation. I wouldn't be surprised with the selfless attitude that he's got. I mean, after he's done, if he makes a full recovery, if he says, hey, listen, maybe next year I'll get back on the field. You never know. You never, ever know. It's possible. You listen, we brought up earlier with Chris Pronger when he was a player many years ago, and he had a successful career after. So you never know what happens. Maybe you just need, something like this to happen. And, you think about other things about life, but who knows? We'll see. We'll see if, neurological stuff also happens too, because obviously he's got to figure things out with, up here, make sure that this is functioning, because the rest of his body can't, or football can't be played, obviously, or anything really, until this is 100%. So there's a lot of things there to eventually figure out. But obviously, when there are updates, you'll be able to see that on our feed, and just to see what, I guess, all the hospital, the hospital personnel will say moving forward. You look back also at this game, and obviously there were a lot of folks that were not happy with some, Skip Bayless being one, about, kind of overlooking the scenario, or the situation that was going on at the present time. And I think now, in the moment, it was definitely something that was an unacceptable tweet in my perspective. I think that it was poor timing. It was a valid tweet. I will stand by that. But the timing was beyond poor. The timing was brutal. Now, you look at it on the other side of things. You look at it on the business perspective, and you say to yourself, all right, there's a lot of money riding on this game. There's a lot of money riding on these seeds. And what you need to do is figure out what the deal is in terms of the seeding. This has massive implications about what's going to happen with Baltimore, Kansas City, and it's not only those two teams that will be affected by this. Now the entire league as a whole will be affected by this. But then you also have to put yourselves in those players' shoes and say, how can these guys go out there when their teammate was just lying on the floor, basically dead? How are you going to do that? I could tell you I can't, because I'll be thinking that, well, what if that happens to me with one hit? T. Higgins was mentally not okay for a little bit, guys. There was a lot of talk too that he felt guilty about what happened. And rightfully so. Because, it wasn't his fault. But how can you go back into a game, catch these passes, score a touchdown, celebrate when someone's in the hospital right now? One of the teammates or one of your brothers in the NFL that is literally fighting for his life. I don't know how you do it. Ian, we heard obviously today from Pro Football Talk, there's an update on the status that the game will most likely be deemed as a no contest. That is not confirmed, but that is where the NFL is leaning towards. It was about an hour delay on Monday night before they postponed the game. Now, again, obviously, as we brought up, so much riding on that contest. So much. Seeding, implications, money, all of the above. So the NFL obviously needed to figure a contingency plan then and need to figure it out now. There's a lot of talk that there might not be a bye seed, a number one bye. There is, and most likely will be, an AFC seeding issue. There's also chatter, too, guys, that there could be a neutral site for the AFC Championship game. And there's also chatter that an expansion of playoff teams from 7 to 8 is possible for both the AFC and the NFC. Now, when you hear that, right, some might say that it's unfair to some teams because, well, they've worked this hard and now they might not have a bye. But if you look at it also, it's pretty much open game if you think about it, right? If you have 16 teams, right, you've got open game. If, let's say, you've got the Chiefs and the Eagles, right, who right now sit as the 1 seed. They don't get a bye. And 1 versus 8, it's just like how it was in hockey many years ago. 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, the list goes on. Is that something that you would like to see just to make it fair? Or how does it work? Because now mathematics comes into play humongously. Ian, I'll start with you.
I think I'm going to start with the piece on expanding the AFC and the NFC playoffs from 7 teams to 8. I'll start there. I think that's something that if they were going to decide to do, I feel like you would have had to decide to do it already.
Yeah.
I think you've got a lot of teams. I'm not saying that coming into week 18 that teams have already kind of bagged the season and might be playing as a result backups. And now you could tell a team like the New York Jets, tell a team. I mean, obviously the Detroit Lions, the Seahawks, and the Packers are all playing, or 3 teams playing for 1 spot on Sunday or Saturday or Sunday, depending what day you're playing. Now you're going to tell the NFC that 2 of those 3 teams are going to get in with 48 hours to go. I don't see that happening. I could see a lot of grievances, not to use that word. Sorry, Mike, but I could see a lot of grievances being aired over that just in a public court of opinion because of this not be. I mean, listen, we've never seen anything like this. I'm all for calling it a no contest. I'm all for moving the AFC Championship to a neutral site area. It's something that the college football playoff does every single year. Why can't the NFL do it? Fans will still go. Fans will still travel,
and they do it for the Super Bowl.
And they do it for the Super Bowl, right? So yeah, I'm on board for that. But Tuesday afternoon, I was driving home from work, and I was listening to, and I don't really listen to Mad Dog Russo much. But I said, you know what, I'm going to listen to sports talk radio this whole day because this is something that goes beyond sports. This is a national news story.
Yeah.
And we want to know what's going on with DeMar Hamlin at every second, up to the minute. And he had Peter King on Monday Morning Quarterback for Sports Illustrated, Peter King. And, Chris Russo decides to start talking with Peter King about kind of the same thing we're discussing here. How do you resolve the issue of seeding? I think what got lost with Chris Russo was not seeing the big picture, not seeing the fact this man was almost dead, not understanding. I don't want to say he wasn't being compassionate. That wasn't the case, but also at the same time, you don't know what would happen if you put the Bills, Josh Allen, all those players back in that stadium in Cincinnati and said, you got to play this game. Even if you moved it, I'm not saying if you moved it to a neutral site and played elsewhere, that maybe things would be different. But he's like, what would happen if, God forbid, Buffalo went into Arrowhead again and lost in the AFC divisional game or the AFC championship game? I don't think Buffalo Bills fans would have it. And in my mind, I'm like, I know if I was a Buffalo Bills fan, that is not the first thing going through my mind, nor would it be come the AFC championship game. And Peter King's counter to that was about how really home field advantage doesn't have the same, I don't want to say moxie, that's the wrong word, but doesn't play as critical of an element in football as it used to. And he's not wrong. But at the same time, I think that it's
channeling our inner Rob DeLuca, are we?
Well, no, that's Peter King, not me. I'm not trying, I'm not going to talk about a San Francisco-Dallas game from 8 years ago. But I think that it brought a couple of points to light about seeing the bigger picture. And I think if you're Josh Allen, if you're Stephon Diggs, if you're Sean McDermott, if you're the Buffalo Bills in general, obviously you're aiming for that number 1 seed. You want that number 1 seed, but at the same time, when are you going to feel ready again to play? Obviously, what would happen if DeMar Hamlin, within minutes, never woke up? What would happen to the NFL season then? What would happen to the Buffalo Bills then? What would happen to the Cincinnati Bengals then? So I have a lot of questions about this. I think a lot of them will be answered more on our show next week, when we know what results of Week 18, because that's where we're at, and they've decided not to continue playing this game. But I'd be on board for either of the first two options there. Just calling it a no contest or not affecting either team's record, or finding some way to play it at a neutral site, or finding a way to have it, in a way, have it benefit Buffalo a little bit. I can't see Kansas City arguing for it or against it. I can't see any team arguing for it or against it. And I'm not trying to put what happened to DeMar Hamlin on the same plane as this, but after 9/11, Paul Tagliabue, then the commissioner of the NFL, had said that he wanted the teams to go back to work. He felt that the one thing that New York City and the country needed in a time of horrible, terrifying terrorism was that football needed to be on Sundays. And the players union came together and said, argued it and debated why they should go back and why they shouldn't go back. And I believe, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Gene Upshaw, who was the director of the Players Association at the time, or one of the players on the union, said, we need to listen to two people right now, and said, we need to listen to Kevin and Mike. And he was referring to Kevin Mawai, who at the time was the starting offensive lineman for the New York Jets, and Michael Strahan. And said, we need to know. So it kind of, I'm using that as an analogy in a way to say, sometimes we have to look at the bigger picture. We've never seen this like before in pro football. We may never see it again. And you don't want to be the one that sets that precedent, that sets that bad example. Obviously, Roger Goodell has a history, has a I wouldn't say a reputation, but a long line of history going against him in this situation. But at the same time, this is something we haven't seen before. It's unprecedented. That's been a key word we've been hearing the last few days. And you just don't want to make a mistake with it. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen. But it's a decent analogy to use there, because I think we can't underestimate how big the picture is here.
Mike, for you, where do you go with this? Especially mathematics too. We go from a couple of years ago during COVID, when every single sport inherited the percentage numbers, and all four major sports in this country inherited the percentage system. And that's what the National Hockey League went off of. That's what college basketball went off of. That's what the NFL went off of too. Do we go back to that?
I don't know. You said mathematics a lot. I don't like math, Joey. That's what there's a lot of scenarios here. It's a lot of mathematics, a lot of percentage points and whatnot. I don't think there's a perfect solution to all of this. I think at the end of the day, no solution. Whatever solution is dealt out, someone's going to be upset about it.
Yeah.
I think in our group chat, we wind up talking about like the possibility of doing a standalone week 19 and you push things back. But then if you're the 1 seed and you have all the buys, I mean, you're talking about 3 weeks of being off. So does that really put someone at a competitive disadvantage? Those kind of questions come into play. If it's a no, if we also put in a no contest, the other part is also Buffalo and Cincinnati both beat Kansas City this year. So there's another thing, like, is it a no contest, percentages, and that also affects things. So I'm for that. I'm for whatever solution kind of mitigates any sort of. You don't want any sort of competitive disadvantages to anybody going into the playoffs or anything like that. If you're able to find a solution that kind of gives as fair of a situation as possible to reflect these teams' seasons and not put anybody at a major disadvantage heading into the playoffs, I'm for it.
I look at it and exactly what the two of you said is, I have to pretty much back both of you there in terms of, there's no perfect solution here. And because we have never seen this before, sure, we saw the postponement of games with COVID, but they were eventually made up. That was the difference. They were eventually made up during the week. We saw football being played in late 2020 on a Wednesday. We saw it on a Tuesday. We saw games on a Friday. No, I think it was Tuesday and Wednesday. I don't think we saw things on Friday. We saw Tuesday and Wednesday. So this is uncharted territory that the league is now they've had no choice but to dip their toes into it. And again, this is a scenario and a situation that no one wanted to be dealt those cards, but here we are. Someone is going to have a problem with something. We all know that, right? But I would say for the NFL, whatever happens, we have to use this as a learning lesson. And I think that, sure, you do the best that you can, right, to come up with a solution here. But I don't know if you have anyone in that office who has a valid solution that would make everyone happy. Someone's going to be mad at something. There might not be, I personally believe that this AFC championship at a neutral site is not a bad idea. I think it's decent, especially too where, it would be an unfair advantage for Buffalo for the AFC to run through Buffalo.
And this is contingent, Joey, also on if Buffalo gets there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
because
it seems likely,
what?
Let's just say, to get there.
Exactly. And let's say Buffalo loses in the first round, right? For instance. Well, then it may not matter. And it may not matter, too, because Kansas City was already the one or whatever it was. And now we go on and that's it. But now that you've made that solution already of a neutral site for the AFC Championship game, then you'll also have the other side of things where Kansas City Chiefs fans would be like, well, now, everything, it doesn't matter. The Bills are out and we should be hosting. Again, it's not a perfect world or perfect scenario that we live in or potentially will see. I am very intrigued, guys, to see how this all plays out because, again, we're only about 24 hours away from the Saturday games. And you've got two, Kansas City and Las Vegas, and Tennessee and Jacksonville. They've got to come up with something before, I would say, before those games. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we'll have to see. Guys, let's keep on moving forward here. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the New York Football Giants, it seems like a million years ago that they made the postseason. Welcome back. The first time since 2016. 9-6-1. They clinched a playoff spot. They're locked in to the 6th seed. Mike, you were about 13 days old when the Miami picture came to light, and Odell Beckham Jr. Was on the boat, and they were partying their butts off, right? Partying like a rock star. That's what LMFAO was saying years ago.
God.
And I mean, like I said, Mike, you don't really remember what 2016 was all about, do you?
It was early 2016. I was 15 years old and had just like three weeks coming off of watching the new Star Wars saga. Like that was the biggest thing going on in my life.
Good Lord. Oh my God, Mike.
7 years ago. I mean, a lot of things have happened since then.
Yeah, that is true. But hey, listen, though. This Giants team, they weren't supposed to be in the postseason. They weren't even supposed to get more than 5 wins, according to multiple places. That's what Las Vegas had them. They only had them around 5 wins. And look, they got 4 wins better. Pretty good stuff, though, in all seriousness, though, when you look at it and you say, well, they clinched a postseason spot. As Ian always says, they're playing with house money. Your thoughts on it, Mike, as a Giants fan?
I think it's fantastic. I think it's ahead of the schedule of what a lot of people thought this team would be. This is the first year of Brian Daboll, Joe Shane at the helm of this program. And I don't think everybody kind of knew there's a rebuilding process here. It's going to take some time. completely new regime from top down to, acquire new talents. There's a lot of salary cap issues and whatnot. And yet they've been competitive from day one. And now they're much more than competitive. They're in the dance. And it's been incredibly impressive to watch all year. You've seen Daniel Jones really improve over the course of this season. You've seen Saquon Barkley finally for a long time, dealing with injuries, struggling with consistency, finally have a nice, healthy year and performing really well this year. And you got to continue to give, we've done so before, but you got to continue to give credit to this coaching staff. I think they have had just about the worst wide receiving core I think I've ever seen in my life. And they're going to the playoffs team. They're going to the playoffs. Like this team has not had a stable, really stable core of wide receivers most of the season. There's been some injuries. There's been a lot of changes. They're picking up guys off of the waiver wires, but they found an absolute stud in Isaiah Hodgins. He's been fantastic. If Richie James could not drop a couple of catches, that would be nice, but he's had some flashes here and there. So you got to give credit to this coaching staff and how they've been able to offensively be able to coach up this team, play competitive football and get out to 9-6-1 record and get into the dance. And how fantastic was it, Ian, to be there in person on Sunday? I think, just looking into the context for Giants fans, like that was pretty much a playoff game, win and in situation. Like, when was the last time the Giants have had a home playoff game? Like that was just a unique scenario for Giants fans in general. So, yeah.
2011, the only playoff game to ever be hosted at MetLife Stadium by either franchise that plays there.
Listen, all I know, guys, is that this photo is coming back, and Odell Beckham in the middle with those Tims. It's coming back. It's coming back next week. That's
what was
for
the
sure.
fashion in 2016? I mean, God, I don't think you even see that now. Tim's on a boat. Forget about.
No, you do. You do.
No,
just go down to Fort Lauderdale and go to Miami and then go party down there, Mike. You'll trust me. You'll see it. Ian Schraier, you get a chance to see this team in the postseason. Obviously, you've said over and over again that this team is playing with house money, and boy, they are continuing to just rake in the chips.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the credit's got to go to Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, head coach, general manager. I think that what Brian Dable's done, and I think going into last offseason when the Giants had parted ways with Joe Judge and parted ways with Dave Gettleman, that was obviously Gettleman. It was a couple of years in the making for Giant fans to be relieved that he was no longer going to be overseeing operations for the team. Coming into this year, 5 wins would have been great for any Giants fan. It would have shown you wanted to see progress. Obviously, the jury was so far out on Daniel Jones showing just any sort of significant progress, because through 3 years we really were still struggling to see him. We were still seeing the same turnovers, the poor decision making, and I'm not just going to keep beating a dead horse about it. But you could argue that over the last 3 weeks, Daniel Jones has really found his game and has succeeded in Daboll's system. I mean, had a chance. Brian Daboll, before he was the Giants head coach, worked with Josh Allen in Buffalo as the offensive coordinator. I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is the next Josh Allen, but I think it shows what type of coach Brian Daboll is and what type of motivator he is, because really that's what a lot of what coaching in the NFL is. It's about game plan and execution, but it's also about motivation. And especially between your head coach and your quarterback in a sport like football, where it's more important than probably any of the other professional sports. You go back to week 1 in Tennessee, where Daniel Jones threw that interception in the end zone off his back foot when the Giants trailed by a touchdown in the red zone. And you could literally see in week 1, this is Brian Daboll in his first game as head coach is already tearing into Daniel Jones apart about his decision-making. And we've just continually seen it get better. I mean, who had the Giants 5-2 through their first 7 games? Nobody, or 6-1 through their first 7 games. And beating Baltimore, beating Lamar at home, going overseas to Green Bay. How good does the Green Bay win now look in hindsight, now entering week 18? How good does that win look? The fact that you went over to London and beat Aaron Rodgers. We knew this team would stumble. There was no doubt about it. Their start did not seem reachable. It didn't seem like it felt like at some point this team was going to fall apart, and then they had that winless month. And you said to yourself, okay, well, they're going to go, they're going to play Washington at home and Washington on the road on Sunday night. It's a must win. They went in there and they won the game. Then the next week they go into Minnesota. And if not for a 61-yard, 62, 63-yard field goal, it's who knows what happens in Minnesota. Yeah. And then in a win-in game against Indianapolis, a team where the Giants, and credit to the Giants, they've done a great job this year of beating teams, of not playing down to their opposition, came in and put up their best offensive performance of the year, 38-10. So, yeah, they're playing with house money, Joey. There's no doubt about it. No one had them coming in. No one had them at 9-6-1. I have this conversation with people all the time. Are you frustrated? After when they had that 0-2-1 start, 0-2-1 month, they were like, are you frustrated with what the Giants are doing? No, not really. I mean, is it frustrating as a fan to watch what was a good start falling apart a little bit? I think any fan would say yes. But at the same time, I think that I would ask them the question in response and say, did you have this team with X number of wins at this point of the season? Did you have the New York Giants or even the New York Jets, who we're going to get to in a second, playing meaningful December and January football this year? No. So, it's obviously as the team got more successful, both the Giants and Jets, the expectations changed, right? And it became from, we're going to be a middle of the pack draft team. We're going to improve. We're going to show progress. Daniel Jones is going to be gone end of the year. Let's see if Saquon's going to play up to a contract. And now we're talking about this team playing either Minnesota or San Francisco on wild card weekend. So as a Giants fan, you've got to be thrilled.
Oh, yeah. And not only that, too, you also have to be thrilled if you're a Jets fan, too, because when you look at them, they're 7-9 right now, and they weren't even supposed to sniff 4 wins, and they almost doubled it, or they could double it if they take down Miami. And keep in mind, too, Miami is without Tua Tagovailoa, and right now it looks like there might be Teddy Bridgewater sighting. We don't know what the deal is there, but the Jets have a very good chance of finishing their season 8-9. And again, we don't know. Technically, they are eliminated from the playoffs. That is the technical term right now. Again, you never know. That could come down if this owners meeting that is set to take place on Friday. It could potentially. It could change things. I don't know if it will, but for right now, to finish off with a potential 8 wins on their season is huge. Ian, I'll go back to you, and then we'll just go to Mike there. Zach Wilson, we've seen so much drama with him in the offseason. We know about the the charades that he did, the college stuff that he did. We know about the childish media appearances that he's made, that some of the things that he said on camera, he doesn't take full responsibility. Did you let the defense down in New England? No, he flat out said no. His father said this. Again, you're playing in the New York market. You're bound to get hounded with these questions. And if you say the wrong thing, even have a wrong breath, you are going to be clawed out and chewed out by this New York media and spit back out. Is Zach Wilson the answer moving forward? And where do you go in 2023 with Robert Saleh's really good team and really the culture that he's building too?
I think Saleh's going to stay. I think if anybody's going to be the scapegoat here, it's going to be the offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur. I think somebody's got to take some type of accountability. I mean, the thing is, the accountability really should be on Zach Wilson, and we still don't exactly know where the Jets stand on Zach Wilson. There were reports saying that they're going to be done with Zach at the end of the year, and then Robert Saleh, whether it's trying to boost his trade value or boost his value in general, which I'm not sure how much he really has. I mean, we know his talent, his talent from college, but saying, "Oh no, we still believe in Zach," and it was frustrating listening to week in and week out these last 7 to 8 weeks of the NFL season, seeing him still go to bat for his quarterback. And I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. You're not supposed to throw your quarterback under the bus. You're supposed to, you go down with the ship, right? But you could say that all this drama with Zach Wilson and the New York Jets goes back to that game after the bye when they started the year 6-2, and they played New England at home and lost on that punt return for a touchdown. That was the game that really turned things upside down, where Zach Wilson was asked at the press conference, "Did you do enough to give your team a chance to win?" And he said yes. And a lot of fans blamed it on the fact that the team couldn't cover a punt. And my reaction after that game was, did you not look at the scoreboard? Did you not see how many points the Jets scored? A whopping total of 3. So yeah, that was where my concern for the Jets started. And then it really, after that, this is a very talented team. A lot of great skill players. Breece Hall. I mean, if the Jets don't lose Breece Hall, the Jets are in the playoffs. You can't change my mind about that. Garrett Wilson, arguably going to be in the offensive rookie of the year discussion. Sauce Gardner, obviously, and going to be in the defensive rookie of the year discussion. Quinnen Williams, after having a very underwhelming rookie year, has bounced back and had a really good second year. You could see Salah's appears to have the heartbeat of that team, but they just don't. But also at the same time, from an offensive perspective, they're lacking in the 2 most key areas. Despite having all these good skill players, are lacking in the 2 most key areas of the game: quarterback and coaching. And if I had to listen to one more week, and I don't know what their plan is going forward, because they're not going to have an early enough pick to draft a Bryce Young, to draft a CJ Stroud. They're not going to have an early enough pick for that. I think the best process going forward is to either sign Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo and make Zach Wilson the backup. That's my plan for the Jets for 2023. Will they do it? I don't know. But it's the 2 areas they lack is quarterback and coaching. And that's what's keeping them from the playoffs. So it looks like Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are going to get to do something that most GMs and head coaches, when they work together, don't get to do, which is have a second chance to work with a quarterback, which is mind-blowing. It's just, I'm tired of hearing about Mike White. Tired of it. The guy was the number 3 quarterback on the depth chart for a reason. I'm sure in Seattle he was playing hurt. But this goes back. I remember telling Mike the other day how a few years ago when Sam Darnold had mono, this Alex Falk guy was going to be the next big thing for the Jets. I mean, I can't listen to it. Listen, I get it. I get it. If you're a Jet fan, you want that franchise quarterback. You're willing to literally attach yourself to anything to make it a reality. But at the same time, you have to know that your window as a Jet fan is to win now. And the question I ask every Jet fan is, let me ask you this. If you think Mike White is your starting quarterback, if you're going to roll the dice with the number 3 starting quarterback on your depth chart in 2023, and it doesn't work out, you've just flushed another season down the toilet. So Jet fans, it's you got to make a decision quick, because this is your time to win. Your window to win is now.
Well, I could tell you this. I mean, to me, the no-brainer is Jimmy G, especially because of that relationship going back to their San Francisco days. Mike, your thoughts on all of this, on all this Jet stuff?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the Jets season, I think you may agree to disagree. I think the Jets season has been an absolute failure, even if they're going to improve on their win total. They started 6-2, and whether right now they're what 7-9. So even if they win, or let's say if they lose on Sunday, they're 7-10. If they win, they're 8-9. So what? They've lost 7 out of the last 8 to end the season. That's just not a good look whatsoever. After starting 6-2, you saw a lot of promising starts in the beginning of this year from Zach Wilson, a lot of promising flashes, and it just all seemed to go down the toilet. First, there was the accountability issues and terrible press conference, and then it started to translate onto the field. And is he losing that wide receiver locker room? And that's like a death sentence to a quarterback. So there's a lot of concerning signs about his long-term future, and some of it is more due to his leadership and accountability, those intangibles, rather than the football aspect. Because there's been some flashes. I think maybe you could argue there's been a lot of bad things surrounding his play in the last 2 months, but there was some flashes early on there. Mike White is just not the answer. I think it's absolutely hilarious to think otherwise. The guy had 2 nice games. Let's relax. Like Ian said, like he's number 3 on the depth chart for a reason. Like, listen, I saw with the Giants, you had last year Mike Glennon. Like that's your comparison. Like that you can't have a full season of that. He really struggled in Seattle. I know it's a tough environment to play, but I mean, man, that was rough to watch. That was rough what the Jets played this weekend.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think it's an absolute failure because the main goal of your season was to see progress from Zach Wilson, and you haven't seen that. The future is murky. I think, like you said, I think the no-brainer situation is to sign Jimmy G. I think he gets a lot of unnecessary hate because compared to and I'm at fault for this too, but I think a lot of it is because he compared to the elite quarterbacks in the league, he doesn't do a lot of fancy things. He doesn't do a lot of fancy throws, and we use the term game manager a lot, but you look at his numbers, like he wins you games. The Jets have a win now roster. You can criticize Saleh for a lot of in-game situations. He likes to take timeouts back home to the Meadowlands with him. Doesn't use timeouts in timely situations. All those nuanced coaching things. But he's done really well in terms of the defense and bringing up the culture of that team. They have a really good defense that, for better or for worse, has kept the score from being laughable even in losses. So they have a really solid defense. They have all the weapons you need to start being a contending team on offense. They just need better quarterback and better offensive coaching.
I'm going to go against you guys here, and I'm going to say that this team is not built to win now. This team is not built to win now, especially too when you've got a whole bunch of younger guys like a Garrett Wilson, you've got a Sauce Gardner. Your offensive line is pretty much in shambles as well, and you have a head coach that's only 2 years in. Joe Douglas was brought in here to really rebuild this whole disaster, and again. How many times have we seen the Jets make general manager changes? I mean, what? Mike Tannenbaum. Oh, my goodness. Guys, help me. Say it again.
John Idzik.
Right, exactly. Yeah, John Idzik as well. There's and the list goes on, and now it's Joe Douglas, too, that, finally someone that, again, is, putting my Eagles bias aside, someone that is competent enough to go in and make the changes that's necessary. And again, we've said this time in and time again, where people have criticized the upper echelon of the Jets and the Johnsons, and it all starts from the tippy top, right? It starts from the top of the pinnacle and it works its way down. And I believe that with what we're seeing with the Jets is that this year it was not a flash in the pan. You saw this team has the ability to potentially be this winning team if you get your culture correct. And I think that they got it with Robert Saleh, but I think, though, that they do have to clear out the garbage. And again, I'm not calling Zach Wilson a literal piece of trash on the street. I'm saying that his play and, that is garbage, right? And those number 3 quarterbacks and that are, the legendary status, Jets legend Mike White, Jets legend Alex Falk, I'm saying? All of these people need to be transitioned out, phased out. And that's, I think, what, this Jets franchise and the organization and pretty much the brass and the upper echelon, they don't want to give up on that number 2 overall pick just yet. And I think now they've got which is why I think also they're keeping him for another year, getting a second chance. As Ian said, we typically don't see that in this day and age in the NFL. where, they have that ability to do so, because in my eyes, I see that as, okay, they've got the foundation here, and they're not going to use him as as the focal point of the team's offense. They're going to probably bring in someone. They've got a lot of money coming off the books. They've got a lot of cap space as well. So they've got the foundation built. Now, how do you build upon it? And that's where I believe where the Jets are. And I think that the 6-2 start, granted, Mike did say that he thinks it's a failure. I completely disagree. 6-2 was a start that no one, not a soul, had on your bingo cards. And if you did, like I always say, you're a cheater. And if that's the case, right? 6-2, 7-9, you now use that 6-2 start and the 1-7, right? In their last 8. You've lost 7 of your last 8 games, but now you know what to fix in the offseason. So now the pressure going into 2023 is even higher for the Jets, because now you have something to build off of. And I think now, again, this is the New York market. It's never, the Jets will always be the baby brother to the Giants. That's how it will always be. But this is something that they're going to use Zach Wilson as kind of like a reclamation project. They're going to sign a quarterback like a Jimmy G or a Derek Carr to a 2 to 3 year deal, maybe, give or take. And they'll see if they can, they can get Zach Wilson back to what he was. And maybe they could use him as a trade piece. You never know. They could use him as a trade piece, or they can, put him in there for whatever the case may be. We could see some flashes in the preseason or whatever it is. Maybe he can fight for a job. Very similar to like what Seattle is probably going to do with Geno Smith. I'm sure that there's going to be, another, I don't want to call it quarterback controversy, but Drew Lock is not going to just sit back and say, all right, I'm going to be the backup to Geno. I think he's definitely going to fight for his job. And I wouldn't be surprised if Zach Wilson does the exact same thing, but it's not going to be a massive quarterback and a massive deal coming into the Jets. It's going to be, and on top of it, this is the year too that they're going to spend money. And then you want to talk about this team being in a win now mode. That's in 2023 when they spend money. They're going to do it. And we've seen Joe Douglas do it before. He's going to do it. And the expectations are going to be that much higher. And Mike, if they start next year 6-2 and end 8-9 or 7-10, whatever it is, then the season's a failure. And then you have to figure out, okay, now there might that culture that we thought was built in 2022 either imploded or it was never there in the first place. And then maybe do we tear it down again, or do we make subtle changes and make this a part of this 5-year thing that Joe Douglas wanted to do?
Well,
anyone want to counter?
Yeah, I'm not going to counter, Joey. I'm just going to kind of add to it. The scary part is just they need a quarterback. There's no, there's no smoking mirrors here like that. They need a quarterback, and they need to get a veteran guy in there. I do think that they are set up to win now. I know that's hard to say with young players. Their offensive line is in shambles because their starting left tackle and their starting left guard, Mekhi Becton and Elijah Vera Tucker, have both been battling injuries all year. So the right side of the line needs more work than the left side, as long as the left side can stay healthy. Breece Hall was very much on his way to being in the Offensive Rookie of the Year discussion before he got hurt. So as a result, their run game was non-existent. But ultimately, it all comes down to game planning. And if you have no quarterback, it's going to make your life. And the thing is he's got enough protection back there. He makes his best plays on the run when he's throwing across his body, doing these unorthodox type things that you don't see quarterbacks do these days in the NFL. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, because we see certain things all the time with Patrick Mahomes that look very unorthodox, but he does them. But I think that's that. I mean, you want to make it a captain obvious statement. I want to see what this team does when they get a quarterback. Then like go sign Jimmy G, go sign Derek Carr. Put yourself in a situation next year where you can win. And I'm not saying Zach Wilson doesn't give you the best opportunity to win, but I think you've thrust him out there enough to where these last 6-7 weeks where players were revolting after that New England game about whether or not their quarterback was standing up for them.
Yeah.
And saying that we didn't do enough because our quarterback didn't do enough and didn't take accountability for his for his poor play on the field. So those are all conversations they're going to have at the end of the season, not even just amongst ownership with Woody Johnson and amongst with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh to determine the future of the franchise. But they are in a position, if they had the right quarterback there, they're a playoff team. And that is without a doubt. I'm not saying they're contending with Buffalo. No, I mean, they beat Buffalo this year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't by pure happenstance. They played a good game against Buffalo at MetLife.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying they can compete with Kansas City. I'm not saying they can compete maybe on the road at Cincinnati, but I think you could put them in the dance and see how they perform when they have a real quarterback. And that's what I really wanted to add to your point, Joey, is I think they're in a position where they can win. I think they just need the right guy under center. And it's the most obvious statement you could say in football, but for the Jets, it's all more the truth.
Yeah, and it's been like that for, again, as long as Mike has been alive. The Jets have not had the Jets have not had a quarterback because, you know, like I said, Mike's only seen Alex Falk and that's it. You know, and then before that, you know, you bring up Vinny Testaverde, Mike's head explodes. So
Chad Pennington, come on, man, Chad Pennington. Last best quarterback the Jets have had was Chad Pennington.
That's very true. Mike, do you remember the butt fumble?
Of course, I watched that game live. That was
Thanksgiving night.
Yeah, that's true.
45 something. Yikes.
Binky and mouth. I know exactly. Yeah, I got you.
The best thing since is Mark Sanchez in my time.
That's Eagles legend Mark Sanchez.
That is very true. Mark Sanchez under Eagles legendary head coach Chip Kelly. That's right. Yes. That's right. Keep that in mind. So week 18, again, big asterisk on week 18 as of right now. We do not know what the deal is as of right this second. Week 18 will go off as planned. Every single game will go off as planned. The only asterisk game I guess we could talk about is Buffalo and New England. Now, again, the asterisk could come down in the next 24 hours. We don't know. And the same, I guess, can go for Baltimore and Cincinnati because the AFC North crown is on the line as well. So and we brought up in the beginning of the show how there is so much that it was on the line in that game. But we move forward. Mike, as we've done in the last pretty much 15 episodes since Ian was gone, he's now back. So now he's going to get a taste of what we typically do in terms of our top 5 things in football. For, you know, a preview of week 18, what do you see for a few of your preview stuff?
Well, I think the biggest, I think the game with the most juice, I think obviously there are a bunch, but I'm really intrigued for Sunday Night Football in Green Bay against Detroit.
Yeah.
How long, even though it's on the road, how long has it been since Detroit has been in this position? I feel like we've said that a ton of times this year, but
2014, they lost to the Saints. Go on.
Yeah, how impressive this year has been for them that they started out 1-6 and now they're 8-8 with the chance to potentially go to the playoffs with the win in Seattle loss. Quite possibly, other than 2014, like literally the most consequential game that they've had in maybe my lifetime and more.
Literally your lifetime. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really intrigued to see that game because they've been hot. Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay have been on an absolute revival the last few weeks just to be in this position as well, to be in a win and in position. So a lot of juice, a lot of stakes in that game. Really intrigued for that one. The race for the 2 seed in the NFC. The Vikings surrendered that a little bit this week, so it flipped. The 49ers, I believe, are currently there.
Oh yeah.
So again, it could flip again if the 49ers lose and the Vikings win. So interesting to see who solidifies that. Because obviously for us locals, whoever is the 3 seed there is going to be playing the Giants. So obviously us the locals are keeping an eye on that and who the Giants will play. So that will be interesting. Of course, the topic that's on everybody's mind is what's going to happen, the Bills and Bengals, how the fallout is for everything else here in week 18. And of course, the Bills and Bengals games themselves, as you alluded to. how do they even get onto the field to be playing these quite huge games that they have to play for? Buffalo in terms of playoff seeding, the Bengals just trying to win their division. Baltimore, who's been quite literally the worst 10-6 team this year, but they have an opportunity to win the division too, as well as solidify their playoffs.
Well, it looks like before Mike, before you continue, Ian does have some breaking news here. Ian, go ahead, and then we'll get back to Mike.
Yeah, sure. So as Mike had was alluding to, the Bills and Bengals, Adam Schefter just tweeted that the Week 17 game that just occurred on Monday night and was halted due to what occurred with DeMar Hamlin is that the Bills and Bengals game will not be resumed. It has officially been canceled, will not be made up. We do not have more specifics at the current time regarding when the game might be made up. Oh, no, we shouldn't say when it be made up, but the ramifications of what could occur with regards to playoffs. So we'll definitely keep you all well in tune as the news comes forward. But right now, as of now, Adam Schefter has reported Bills and Bengals will not be resumed, will not be made up. It has officially been canceled.
Yeah, it's a big deal, Mike. We brought this up before, now this is now. And you know what? In addition to that, we don't know what the NFL is going to come up with, but also it throws a wrench in game plans too, especially if you're Baltimore and Cincinnati, no?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's got to affect things knowing that the stakes are that much more higher now. You're not going to have the specter of potentially a Week 19 game or something else coming up that you'll be able to resume that game or something like that. This is it. This is your you got to be able to take care of business this weekend. That's it for your season. So the stakes were already quite high for Cincinnati. And Baltimore just turned up even higher. Sort of my last point, I think, kind of, as a look toward the future, it's for Week 18 and beyond, is the Raiders. It looks like, how they go forward. They're just playing for pride at this point against Kansas City.
Yeah.
And how do they go forward, really? It looks like Derek Carr is going to be gone. And what's the long-term future of that team?
Yeah, really crazy stuff to see, especially when the Raiders they played really well last season. But it's always funny when Josh McDaniels comes in, right? He always figures to he always finds a way to ruin things, and that's exactly where he's at now. He ruined it with Denver. He got fired after the first year. Denver has problems of their own in present day. Obviously, Nathaniel Hackett's gone. But the Raiders, it looks like that they're going to move on from Derek Carr. And, the way that was handled is definitely something that we will be keeping an eye out on. A couple of points here, Ian, and then we're going to get to the other breaking news that just came through regarding the scenarios in the AFC. A couple of things here in terms of my preview here. Jacksonville could get back to the playoffs for the first time since 2017. Hey, listen, Dougie Fresh, I told all of you. My man, Eagles legendary head coach, former head coach, Doug Peterson, could be bringing the Jacksonville Jaguars back to the promised land. Let me tell you something, folks. This is going to be something that he will build upon, and this is not a flash in the pan. He is a very, very good coach, and he's got a very, very good quarterback, and he's learned from the best in Andy Reid in terms of developing quarterbacks, and Trevor Lawrence is in very good hands. I'll tell you this much. The first time since 2017, the only time that Jacksonville clinched a division, they also made it to the AFC Championship game against New England. They did pretty well. They were just a couple of minutes away from going to the Super Bowl with legendary Rams backup quarterback Blake Bortles, Ian Schraier, right? Remember that, right? We can't forget that. And also, too, Doug Marrone was the head coach, too, at the time, right? That was another big deal, too. Yeah.
Legend.
Yeah. Another thing, too, here is my last point here before we go to the next thing. And I hate to bring this up as an Eagles fan, but the Eagles have a real shot at blowing the 1 seed.
Oh,
they have a real shot at blowing it. They do. And you know what?
It's Tyrod, baby. Let's go.
Let me tell you this. It's a difficult situation because Gardner Minshew, a lot of people thought backup quarterback, they immediately think of Nick Foles, and that was not the case. Gardner Minshew, he looked great against Dallas, but the defense looked terrible. And against the Saints, he looked terrible, and the defense looked great. It was back and forth. But also keep in mind too, Dallas is playing at Washington in Landover on natural grass. Keep in mind, little nugget for everybody, they are 0-3 on natural grass this season. Little nugget. So if Dallas loses, Eagles clinch the 1 seed and the NFC East. So
Have the Eagles officially?
I'm sorry, they clinch the East. They do not clinch the 1 seed. They clinch the NFC East. Thank you. Sorry.
Joey, have the Eagles officially announced if Jalen's playing or not yet?
No, he's still limited. But chances are, someone will probably have to, they'll have to go into the operation box and give him a toy arm to throw, because that's pretty much where we're going towards. So again, just before we move on here, guys, because of what is going on, let's see here. I just want to say, hold on. Let's look at the tweet that the NFL proposed. It's a long tweet. We won't go into it completely, but we will give you the gist. So, because it will not be resumed, Buffalo and Cincinnati, these are the scenarios that the NFL is looking at. There are 3 different scenarios. So the AFC, this is verbatim directly from the NFL. Canceling the game between the Bills and the Bengals creates potential competitive inequities in certain playoff scenarios. Yeah, we know. In an effort to mitigate those inequities, NFL clubs will consider tomorrow, which is Friday, in a special league meeting, a resolution recommended by the commissioner and approved today by the competition committee, consisting of 2 elements. The first, the AFC championship game will be played at a neutral site if, now this is a big if, the participating teams played an unequal number of games and both could have the number 1 seed and hosted the game had all AFC clubs played a full 17-game regular season. Those circumstances only involve Buffalo or Cincinnati qualifying for the game as a road team are listed below. So the first scenario, Buffalo and Kansas City both win or both tie. A Buffalo versus Kansas City championship game would be at a neutral site. I know Kansas City fans would not like that, but here we are. Scenario 2, Buffalo and Kansas City both lose and Baltimore wins or ties. A Buffalo-Kansas City championship game would be at a neutral site. And the third scenario, Buffalo and Kansas City both lose, Cincinnati wins. A Buffalo or Cincinnati versus Kansas City championship would be at a neutral site. So who loses here? Kansas City, I guess? Is that pretty much where we're going towards?
Yeah, I think it's just tell Kansas City to get the 1 seed, I guess. But Buffalo clinches with a win. So over New England, this was not surprising. It's going to be hard enough. I guess a little bit easier considering things with DeMar Hamlin have improved, but it's a lot to ask these 2 teams after really witnessing something so traumatic to go back out there on that field and resume a game just like nothing happened on it. And that's where we're at. And I think that a lot of it had, and I'm going to bring back up the tweet here for 1 second, because there was a piece of it that I really wanted to, and this was something that our friend Rob DeLuca had brought up, and I had kind of countered him on and said that there's a nice little bullet point here. The second bullet point says, among the key factors in arriving at this decision, it would require postponing the start of the playoffs for 1 week, thereby affecting all 14 clubs that qualify for postseason play. Yeah. There was no way, shape, or form that the Super Bowl was being pushed back or they were eliminating the media week. It was not happening. The playoffs were starting on time. There's way too much money that goes into these NFL playoffs, especially the Super Bowl, and there's just no way that they were going to start a Week 19. This is the best case scenario was to, and I'm sure Buffalo Bill fans are not thrilled about the idea of, hey, maybe we might have to play the AFC Championship game in Detroit. I mean, like these are things that are going to come up.
Bills fans don't care because they did well in Detroit anyway, twice.
Right? Yeah, they've traveled a second time, but
really a third time if you think about it.
Yeah, well, that's true, right? Because they were there on Thanksgiving, right?
Yep, exactly.
So it's not ideal for Bills fans. It's not ideal for Chiefs fans, but this is what we call. And kudos to Roger Goodell, right? This is what we call seeing the bigger picture. Yes, I understand. Fans pay a lot of money for season tickets. They pay a lot of money to see their fans play, their teams play at home. But this is something unlike, and again, not to rehash the same conversation, but it's important that we do that. This is something we've never seen before. And this is something that is unprecedented It was terrifying in the moment that it happened. I mean, I know somebody that was at that game, and said that the stadium was literally dead silent.
Mm-hmm.
Only thing they were
Pin
thinking
drop.
of in that moment was the life of Damar Hamlin and whether or not he was going to live.
Yeah.
Well, those things, those points tell you that there was no way that they were going to resume this game as if, hey, Damar's okay. We'll just play on. No. That's not what this is about. This is about the life of Damar Hamlin. It deserves the attention and deserves the care that it needs for the family of Damar Hamlin, for the players that were on the field that night in Cincinnati. And this was the best. If they proceed, which it looks like they're going to proceed with a neutral site game in Buffalo's case, this was the best way to go about it.
And something else too here, guys, it throws in another team into this blender here. Scenario 3 we brought up before, a Buffalo or Cincinnati versus Kansas City championship would be at a neutral site. There's also that second element that we didn't get to. If Baltimore defeats Cincinnati in Week 18, it will have defeated Cincinnati, a divisional opponent, twice, but will not be able to host a playoff game because Cincinnati will have a higher winning percentage for a 16-game schedule than Baltimore for a 17-game schedule. So this again brings in something else. Excuse me, here. And this actually, the second to last paragraph is something too. Quote, if Baltimore defeats Cincinnati and if those two clubs are scheduled to play a wild card game against one another, get this, the site for that game would be determined by a coin toss.
Oh boy.
You want to talk? So now that's four teams. And again, everyone is very, very great. And I'll be honest with you, if you're not, then you're not human. If you're not happy that Damar Hamlin is okay and this game is not getting resumed, then you need some help. But I'll continue on here. Now 4 teams, not 2. 4 total teams now are affected by this. It's tough. It's tough now as a coaching staff and as players. You have to adjust. And now the NFL as a whole is wide open, especially on the AFC side too.
Well, my goodness, I love Twitter because it's funny how we bring this up and Ian Rappaport comes out with a tweet just as we're talking about this. And I'll read the tweet that says, there are scenarios where, and just alluding to exactly what Joey was saying, scenarios where the Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, and or Bengals could play in a neutral site AFC title game. Detroit is the usual spot, but Ford Field is booked. The remaining options now are Atlanta and Indianapolis as the neutral site locations for an AFC championship.
Well. Now I'd almost want to find out if it's actually booked or if, you know why? Because if you think about it, right? Because then it kind of becomes, we talk about this inequity thing here that Roger Goodell pointed out. Technically, that's 3 games that the Bills would be playing in Detroit. So is it actually booked, or did they say, no, Detroit is off the table if Buffalo had to go play there? Because
if you want to look to see if maybe there's a rodeo or Jam Sunday show in Detroit, be my guest. I can't see why Ian Rappaport would lie and say that Ford Field is booked for an inequitable reason. I'm sure he probably at that moment looked up the same thing that you're looking up at this moment, Joey.
Well, this is what I'll tell you here is that there is not an event that's at least public knowledge anyway until March 11th, which is Monster Jam.
I was too early on Monster Jam, I guess.
So, and that's March 11th. So that's a month in it. That's a month and a week after the Super Bowl. But hey, listen, what do I know? All I know is that, again, that's something that I would not be surprised if was discussed, where Buffalo would be they would have an unfair advantage because Detroit is so close. We've already seen the ramifications of that one misplaced game. It's possible. Guys, let's keep on moving forward here just because we gotta keep rolling here. Of course, our picks. It's a big deal because, again, we take a peek here at what happened in Week 17 and back-to-back weeks, guys. It's been fantastic. It's been a perfect week for all of us. But The problem, though, for the Essential Wrestling Podcast crew is that they're still 4 games back through 17 weeks. So LP and Rob DeLuca are still fighting for that overall, for the individual title. LP right now, all he needs is a win. DeLuca needs a Larry loss, and DeLuca needs a win to force the tiebreaker to go into the playoffs, which is exactly what John DeConnie and Ian Schraier battled through all the way to the Super Bowl. So that would be pretty cool to see if those two can hash it out. And yeah, it looks as if that right now, if the Primetime Rundown, they can win, I think it's 3 games, they clinch the divisional title. So with that being said, let us go to Mike Szabo for starters. Mike, your pick for week number 18 goes to...
Well, you alluded to it before, and your favorite guy, it is Jacksonville taking the division and taking down the Tennessee Titans.
Okay. All right. Well, and listen, Josh Dobbs is going to be starting for Tennessee, but they get a lot of reinforcements, though. Derrick Henry comes back. Danico Autry comes back on the defensive side. Tennessee's not going down without a fight, Ian Schraier. For you, who do you have?
So I'm going to turn to the Sunday night game, and just because of the very poor scheduling of not putting Green Bay, Detroit, and Seattle on at the same time. So should Seattle not lose, or should Seattle win, Detroit would instantly be eliminated, and it is a win-in situation for the Green Bay Packers. And Lambeau has always been a house of horrors for the Detroit Lions. So as a result, in a win-in game for Aaron Rodgers, give me Rodgers at home. I'm taking Green Bay.
Okay, well, for me, we are going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars because, again, it's all about Dougie Fresh, and it's all about Trevor Lawrence. They are going to host a playoff game. It's going to be tons of fun. I cannot wait. Guys, we do have our friend Tom Emberly in the back, but Tom, we will ask just to wait just a few seconds to get you on. We do want to just get on one more thing here. Actually, you know what? I do have an idea. I'm going to bring you in here. Just, why not? Let's see. Let's move this over here. Hold on. Let's see. We haven't done this yet. So, oh, Big Tom, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, my goodness. Tom, the sports information director at Farmingdale State College, SUNY Farmingdale. Tom, good to see you, my friend. How are things with you out here on the island?
Things are good. Happy to be here.
Oh, extremely grateful for you to be here, man. It's going to be tons of fun to have you on here. But we are extremely happy that you are here. But we are going to put you on the spot here now with a couple of things Major League Baseball in a few short seconds. But Ian, we spoke about early on about Rafael Devers last night. He signed that 11-year deal worth, I think it was $331 million deal. They avoided arbitration. Lots of turnover though in Boston, looking to trade Chris Sale, even though all of this, so they're in a little bit of limbo here. What's the deal?
Well, I think you actually brought the perfect person in because Tom does happen to be a Red Sox fan. He's originally from Massachusetts, so the timing couldn't have been more beneficial. But this is really interesting for the Red Sox after letting Xander Bogaerts go to San Diego. They're in an interesting spot. I know when we were talking to Rob DeLuca the other day, he had said that you do need a piece to really rally the troops around if you are rebuilding. Right now the Boston Red Sox, I believe, are at 133 million. I don't know if that adds in Devers' number for the upcoming year or not yet, but that still puts them about 100 million under the competitive balance tax threshold. Not even the Steve Cohen tax, but the CBT, the luxury tax. And there's a lot of question marks coming into for the Red Sox. I know a lot of Red Sox fans have starting to argue, are they a big market team acting like a small market team from a payroll perspective? Retaining Devers was huge. I know that the Mets were definitely interested in trading for Rafael if things with Carlos Correa didn't work out. It's nice to see that someone who has spent his whole career, finally, not Mookie Betts, maybe not Xander Bogaerts, but Rafael Devers is going to be locked into being a homegrown Red Sox player, what seems like for the rest of his career. So barring any trade in the near future, but 11 years, it's a lot of money. Got a lot of questions about the Red Sox coming into this year, especially areas as Thomas just pointing. Obviously they still have Trevor Story in that lineup, but questions everywhere else. I mean, right now your outfield is Verdugo, Kike Hernandez, and Yankee legend Rob Refsnyder.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things to be discussed in addition to what is a very, very scary rotation. So, but this is good for Boston. They needed to at least try to retain one of these guys. I'm not really sure what their plan was by signing Devers, if they're really in a full rebuild mode, but we'll see what 2023 has in store for the Sox. It's interesting, especially now that they just signed Devers long-term.
It's so tough to say too, Tom, because they also signed Masataka Yoshida too, right? How many years? 5 years too, right? And he's 31 years at 30 years old, in that range. And they signed him to a big deal. He's slated to play the outfield. I mean, how do you – and it's tough because, there's a lot of chatter that they could be trading Chris Sale. They lose Xander Bogaerts. And for your Red Sox team, my goodness, what a big question mark, where what direction are you going in?
I mean, the guy still has to beat out Refsnyder, doesn't he? Let's not kid ourselves. What direction are they going? Our boy Heim doesn't know what direction they're going. So let's start there. It's very enigmatic. There are some keywords, some pitching pieces, not nearly what the Cohen tax was referenced before, not nearly what pitching pieces reside in Flushing at this point in time. You don't have a bona fide locked in 1 through 9 at this point. And in that division, that's no bueno.
Yeah.
That's no bueno. You talk about rebuild, this and that, and it's good that they locked in somebody. However, whatever graphic floated on the cesspools on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or in the last week or two of since Heim Bloom has been there, they've lost Betts, Benintendi, etc., in exchange for a lengthy list of people to reference Rachel Phelps. This guy here is dead. Cross him off then. So I don't know. NCAA don't bet on it. I know people were making their picks as I joined the room here. But if you're talking about a 500 team in Fenway Park, NCAA don't bet on it, hammer the under.
Mike, your thoughts as a Yankees fan. I'd love to hear that from you.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't think Garrett Cole's too happy about Rafael Devers continuing to be in this division for the next 11 years. So I think he's probably not happy right now. But I think going back to what Ian said, the Red Sox need somebody through whatever rebuild, retool, whatever term you want to use for what they're going through right now. At least they have somebody locked up through their prime that they can rely on in this lineup. Devers is an absolute stud. He's 26 years old, entering his prime. He's been absolutely fantastic in 3-4 years in the league that he's been up in the majors. He's been absolutely fantastic. He's the one thing that you don't really have a question about with the Red Sox. Everywhere else is really a bunch of question marks. I think he's gonna. You've at least secured that's your gate ticket item. No matter what's happening with the Red Sox and next year or whatnot, you're buying a ticket, you're going to see Rafael Devers. You might see a lot of bad stuff around him, but Rafael Devers is just going to be that solid guy.
Tom, what do you got?
You're paying to see Rafael Devers, but you're paying for all the pink hats to sing Sweet Caroline in the middle of the 8th inning. And not a whole heck of a lot else.
That's true.
It makes me so incredibly proud to have grown up in the greater Boston area. Dramatic pause. Looking at this lineup right now. I don't know if this stream is FCC regulated or not. If it is, I'm just here so I don't get fined. If it's not, knowing this is probably being recorded somewhere on Joey Jazz's computer, I probably still should be here so I don't get fined. But when the recording is off, there are many better than pay-per-view opinions behind this balding between the ears head. Let's put it that way.
Listen, this is what I say. This is what I can tell you with Boston is just, listen, what he's done though, 295 batting average last season, 27 home runs, 88 RBIs. He is the face of the franchise. It's very troubling to see though when you bring up, Tom, about you lose Benintendi, you lose Betts. And then also keep in mind too, right? We remember also a part of the Betts deal. Jeter Downs was a part of that Verdugo, that return too. Jeter Downs he was claimed off of waivers, I think, by Washington. He was designated for assignment. This was a complete lose of a trade. That Kyle Bloom and the Boston brass, did because they didn't want to extend and give a massive deal to Mookie Betts, which, again, I stand by this to this day. It was one of the biggest mistakes that Boston could have done, and you look all the way back, and I'm sure, Tom, you probably don't want to ever relive this, but you remember that deal for Carl Crawford a gazillion years ago, like what, 12 years ago? It was one of the biggest.
Carla Crawford.
It was one of the biggest deals in Boston history ever signed, and then you had David Price and then Devers, and then this Devers deal just went right above it. Really crazy.
So at least Devers, to be fair and non-sarcastic for 5 seconds on this podcast, at least Devers has proven he can do something in Boston.
Yeah, that's true.
Crawford did not, in my opinion.
No, Crawford was also on the injured list for 3/4 of his stint there, but yeah.
I'm going to refer back to my G-rated commentary before I say something I'm going to regret there. Price did something in Boston when it finally mattered, and he had the trump card, as he said in the post-World Series press conference. But with all due respect to my friend Joey Jazz, he made one mistake by referring to Boston brass. The only brass, in all fairness, at this point in time in New England sports is the old school brass bonanza playing at the Hartford Civic Center. Yeah. Let's not kid ourselves.
I mean, just from a Boston perspective, when you go back to as Joey's really losing his mind here.
Good.
We think about Carl Crawford and the Adrian Gonzalez deal, and going back to the days when Dave Dombrowski, Joey's favorite general manager, was running ship.
Legendary president
in Boston. So, but this was I don't want to call it a must-have deal for the Red Sox. I mean, that team, that franchise sells out every home game at Fenway Park, just on the city and the stadium alone, and just the aura of the franchise. And so I don't know. Again, this isn't me thinking selfishly as a Met fan. It's just more that I don't know if you do have to rally the troops, I guess, around one centerpiece. And considering Devers is entering his prime, it's the right player to keep. Yeah, in hindsight, losing Mookie was terrible. I mean, it's definitely set them back. But also at the same time, you start to get curious about when the turnaround is going to start to come for the Red Sox, going forward, and who are those next pieces? I mean, right now, like I said, they're at 133 million. I don't know whether that number includes Devers' number for this year or not, but either way, they have a lot of money that they should be able to spend, with John Henry leading that sports group that owns the Red Sox. So it's I'm curious. I mean, obviously, I think 2023 is going to be much of a wash for the Red Sox, but 24 and 25 are going to be very interesting years going forward.
Listen, nothing for nothing. You don't need to be a fuzzy math Ross Perot person. Of course, it's got to include Devers' salary, because who else is on the payroll? Johnny Meatball? What are we doing? And in all fairness, okay, dramatic pause. You have to get to Kenley Jansen. I mean, we're talking about aura of Fenway. I mean, this ain't no 151st and River or Mystique, but guys, come on, let's not kid ourselves here.
Definitely fair. Definitely fair. Listen, I'll be honest with you. I am intrigued to see what Boston does moving forward because, as we brought up at nauseum just a few moments ago, there's just one giant question mark about this team and the direction of it. And we see now, obviously, where, Devers is the face of the franchise. We know that. Now, how do you build around him? So we'll see. We've heard a lot about Trevor Story being a potential bust. Are you going to move him back to shortstop now that Bogarts is gone? Don't think so. That's what we continue to hear. But again, things can change within the next month and a half until pitchers and catchers. So, and really spring training games. So I'm sure that we're going to be seeing a lot of that there.
Jose Iglesias, where are you? Oh, wait. You're not going to be there anymore.
Baltimore Orioles legend Jose Iglesias, right, Tom?
I mean, Jose, Enrique, I don't know. One of the Iglesiases. But here's the thing. In all fairness, he put up those great numbers that you're speaking of. He had people around him.
Yeah.
He did.
I mean, it's not going to be, I'm being a very facetious wise ass with what I'm about to say. It's not going to be 50,000 walks breaking Barry Bonds' record.
Right.
But who's going to be around him where you actually have to throw pitches to him? Like, Spider Tack guy can get away with throwing 4 balls every time, and it doesn't matter because he's still going to have an ERA of Mr. Blutarski 0.0 against the Red Sox because there's nobody else to drive Devers in when he gets the free pass.
And I'm sure that grinded your gears, Tom, to come in here with the Boston Red Sox talk, huh?
No, I couldn't care less.
Oh man. Well, let's keep moving forward here and let's talk about a little bit more of soccer. And it's not football, it's soccer, right? That was the motto when it was USA and England in the FIFA World Cup about a month and a half ago, or actually, about a month and a half ago, give or take, which is crazy that it's been that long already since the World Cup. There was a lot of drama surrounding U.S. men's national team head coach Greg Berhalter, and we know that Mike Szabo cannot stand this head coach. We now know also that Mike is not a fan of him, but I think though there is a little bit of leash that Mike can give Berhalter for what has gone on. So Mike, do us the honors and please not only air out your grievances with Berhalter, but also there was some chatter kind of like with Gio Reyna about a potential pretty much hit job almost on this man to try and get him fired. So in our segment of Mike's grievances, let us hear it. What went on and your thoughts about this entire situation.
Well, my surface level grievance is that every time there's any sort of, as much as soccer has grown in this country over the last, a few decades and whatnot, every time there seems to be any sort of momentum when it comes to this program, whether it's on the field, off the field, there's always just something that it's 2 steps backward now. And it seems like they continue to make the most news when bad, controversial situations pop up. And here we go again. This is a situation, it will come up in every single news outlet of this, huge story that pops up. And I mean, there's so much blame to go around on all sides. I think a lot of the focus is on Gio Reyna's and his parents, which I think this is like youth soccer parenting on steroids. Practically just calling the federation and saying, hey, you're treating my son like this, and they just go bring up this the domestic violence fact from what was it 30 years ago and brought this up into the public. Now, I think even though as much as that has gone to the forefront, I think the worst part is that like at the beginning of this, 30 years ago or not, there was an act of domestic violence, which is always bad. You never want to see that happen. I sincerely hope, from what we know about Greg Berhalter as a person, his entire time of him being in the U.S. men's national team spotlight, we hope that was an 18-year-old kid who did not know, made a terrible, unbelievable mistake and a terrible act. And as much as it's a terrible thing that happened, and he did. It's been 30 years later, and this came up in a situation that it was used in a light where it was a coaching decision. That's where I'm annoyed with this whole situation. Is as much as yes, there's a situation. It happened a long time ago. It was not good on Berhalter, but it seems to have been privately resolved. Yet it's coming back into light because some kid's parent was annoyed at a coaching decision. There's just so much blame to go around on all sides, and it's just really frustrating, I think, from a fan perspective, coming off of what on the field I think was a pretty solid World Cup for the U.S. men's national team. But instead, we're sitting here on January 5th having to talk about this situation that can really spiral this federation out of control and in a hurry.
Ian, your response to that before we get to Tom.
Yeah, I think if anybody had a chance to watch today and see Greg Berhalter kind of get out in front of this, I think he said everything he needed to. This was something that occurred 30 years ago at the University of North Carolina between him and his then wife. Obviously, I think that in so many cases we've seen before in the year of our Lord 2023 that whatever he tries to say at this point, even though it was eloquent and it was well said, that it's probably going to cost him his job. I don't think there's any two ways about it. And I don't think any of the 3-4 U.S. soccer fans on this podcast would disagree with me on that. This is years of friendship that are being thrown down the drain because a fellow legend, Claudio Reyna in U.S. soccer, decides my son's not happy. He only played 45 minutes in four U.S. World Cup matches, and here's this little piece of blackmail that I'm just going to kind of leave in my back pocket that I never thought I would have to use against somebody who was really my best friend. And I'm not trying to argue in favor of anything Greg Berhalter did at that moment. You're 18 years old. You make a mistake. I'm not saying that shouldn't cost him his job. But at the same time, I thought what he said today was very well said. He said, this was his wife's story to tell. And that's the other part of this story that really bugs me, is that if she really wanted to come out and say it, she'd come out and say it. And his his kind of follow-up statements was our marriage, our relationship that has been going on strong now for 31 years. I mean, that is really, it should never be that brings them closer together. But at the same time, you learn through these type of things. And again, no one's on this podcast promoting via any type of behavior like that. But at the same time, he's saying that now we have a family, we have children together, we're happily married, and that is the moment that brought us closer together. So it's yeah, like Mike said, it's one step forward, two steps back. Right now, all the steps are to prepare for 2026. The U.S. men's national program got exactly where it needed to this year. The whole idea was, after missing 4 years ago, was to get past the group stage. And when we were all sitting there that afternoon watching them hang on against Iran and make it to the knockouts, you said to yourself, all right, we know exactly where this program needs to go in 4 years. They're young. They're ambitious. Do they have the right guy at the helm? Whether or not we all agree that Greg Berhalter is the right guy, yes and no. But at the same time, you felt that the leadership was right there, and that they were going to do what they needed to get that much further when the World Cup comes to North America in 4 years. So, but this is just the ongoing saga of U.S. soccer, right? It's one thing after another. I think Taylor Twellman said it perfectly as well yesterday. But it's really, what are the next steps? And the federation's really got to get out in front of it. I thought Berhalter did a great job again, getting out ahead of this. And I think this will all fall back on parties not named Greg Berhalter, but in the meantime, he's going to take a big chunk out of this. He might even he's probably going to lose his job out of it. But U.S. soccer's got to figure out next steps now, because they've got a couple of international friendlies coming up where they need to have a manager in place.
Well, Tom, we'd love to hear your thoughts about this. You're a big U.S. men's national team guy. This obviously throws a wrench into things when, you've built up a lot of momentum heading into 2026. The foundation was built. That's something that we've kind of, spoken about on this show ad nauseum about other things. And this team now, they might not have a coach that might, change a few things up. How does that, what are your thoughts on this whole saga that's going on here with the current men's national team head coach?
For starters, are we on a time limit?
The floor is yours, and if only I had time to give you the grievance photo, I would have done that, but it is Tom's floor to air out his grievances.
There's no grievance necessary. There's no poll necessary. You can save that for December 23rd next year or whenever the hell it is. Where to begin? Number one, not only did 3G, as I call him, get out in front of it today, 3G got out in front of it with a statement 48 hours before. Before Raina did. Before Mrs. Raina did. Etc. Mind you, I'm not saying Gio Raina. I'm saying Mr. and Mrs. Raina.
Right.
Strange. You're going back to 1992. 1992.
Yeah.
1 to 3 people on this floor right now may not have been born then. Let that sink in, as I'm sitting there with gray hair as a teenager at that time. If this was really, go through all the quotes, because as we all know, somewhere in the middle lies the truth. I think we can agree to that as human beings here.
Yep.
I know 0.0 Blucharski out of the 4 people on here condone contact with anybody at any time.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
As a human being, I think something I always say, whether in the workplace, home, etc., is someone gets worked up, tweaked out, roid rage, whatever. My whole thing is, have you ever made mistakes?
Yeah.
And here's my thing. The statement comes out from Berhalter before anything from the Raina family, which contradicted itself quite a bit, the two Rainas. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Mrs. Raina, Rosalind's roommate, by the way, for the legendary Anson Dorrance at Carolina at that time, sat there, and I'm paraphrasing the quote from yesterday, and pretty much said that everything Berhalter's statement, which was pretty much joint with his wife last time I checked, from 2 days ago, completely minimized the event in question, the trauma afterwards, and so on. The question I would pose to the millions and millions of Eastern Observer fans: someone go back to 1992. Can you show me the Chapel Hill Police Department's report on this incident? Can you show me the University of North Carolina Police Department's report on this incident? Can you show me any articles that came out from any of the media in the Research Triangle area? Can you show me anything that came out from the student publications at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill? The answer is, unless you're pulling something out of your posterior after you have a number 2, the answer is you can't. So was knowing that many of us probably weren't even alive when this occurred. And certainly 0 out of 4 were there.
Yeah.
Is this really minimized? Or is this conjecture, of course, but that's why we're here? Is this really Mrs. Reyna trying to CYA for Claudio, who in my somehow some crazy school gave me an MBA degree. And I don't mean National Basketball Association. I mean the other consonant right before that in the alphabet. So in my MBA dealings, if you're Cindy Parlow, if you're Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Bezos, etc., John Henry Fireheim, by the way, last time I checked, if you're going to run a successful business, don't you really, if you're trying to not stay status quo, because when you're status quo, you fall behind because everyone else gets incrementally better. If you're trying to run a successful business, don't you need to have people on your team, not only that A, you work with, not they work for you, but B, don't you need people on your team that you can trust?
Yeah.
So here's the first bold strategy cotton bomb that I'm going to drop here. I don't know how much longer Claudio Reyna is the GM of Austin FC.
Oh.
How can you trust him? And keep in mind, like, Gay Fokker, circle of trust, round and round we go, Jack, right? So, Josh Wolf is the coach. Who was the super sub number 9 on those teams in the late 90s and early 2000s with Berhalter, with Reyna, with Ernie Stewart? Josh Wolf. So, I go back, I think it was Mike that said, this is youth soccer on steroids. Like 5-10 minutes ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
This isn't youth soccer on steroids. This is a full-fledged friggin' roid rage. Make no mistake.
Yeah.
Make no mistake. And again, I want to emphasize one more time. This in no way, shape, or form says that any of us condone the incident that happened, that the two parties involved admitted to 48 hours ago and agreed to. But again, sidebar, there was really that much trauma. A, did he coerce her to say I do on the altar? Did he coerce her to have, sorry, LeBron, not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 children together? And
Make up a good point, yeah.
And they just celebrated anniversary number 25 of their wedding.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, just to cut you off there, Tom, it's perfectly said, because also, you know, again, when you hear that, how much really, you know, I guess coercion is there? 25 long years and all of that, and again, listen, as Tom said ad nauseum, you know, we don't want to ever condone any of this, but what we do know is that, you know, if this is a hit job, if this is pure blackmail, which most likely, Mike, we spoke about this off camera, probably is. Do you agree with Tom there that maybe Reyna might just be out at Austin FC? Like, do they then take action if things don't come to fruition, or does he have his job, but the trust factor goes pretty much down the tubes?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. I wouldn't be surprised, because that would be the same reason why the Federation probably wouldn't bring him back. Is there's too much of a media storm around Berhalter now, all that sort of stuff. It's going to be the same thing for Claudio Reyna. I think whether it's Claudio Reyna or now the Reyna family in general, I think they just have a stain on them that they can't be removed. I think going back to the incident again, I think the worst part about all of this is that the way in which Danielle Reyna, Gio Reyna's mom, brings this incident forward, it's not out of a deep concern or anything like that. The incident was was cheapened to the fact of it was only being used as a way, hey, you're being harsh to my son when, he's acting a little bit immature at his age, but so did you. It's not, it's such a terrible use of such a horrible incident. At the end of the day, this was her roommate, her college teammate, her roommate that at the time, 30 something years ago, went through something terrible. And it's being brought up now is not a way of concern. Like, oh my goodness, she went through something, went through domestic violence way back when and whatnot. This is being brought up out of, spite, really. That's what bothers me so much about this story. It's that, this is a terrible incident that's being weaponized in such a terrible fashion. And the Reina name, I think, is going to be stained for a while, no matter what happens, whether Greg Berhalter's back or not. I think trust factor with all three of those members is really broken.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Tom, last point.
I'm gonna apologize in advance. This is giving me legit agita talking about this, because that's how disgusted I am as a human being, to be honest, let alone fan. I think 4, if not 5 things happen here. 1, Gio Reyna for the rest of his career, because his parents had what I call, and I won't use the actual terms, the Counts of Monte Cristo theory of, oh, forget me? No, forget you. Gio Reyna is now going to be stained by brass at club and or at country for the rest of his career.
Yep.
That's piece 1. And 1B, if you will, is this all came down because a few days after they got knocked out, Berhalter did some interview or whatever it was and was off record, but we know how that goes working in media, as many, if not all of us do, etc. Miraculously, 5 days later, the transcript mistakenly has that in there.
Yeah.
But mind you, he didn't use Reyna's name when he's describing there was someone in camp, I'm paraphrasing, attitude problem, almost sent somebody home from camp, from Qatar, etc. You can put 2 and 2 together. Here we are. But if you're a college professor, or you're anything, you're training somebody for management in Amazon or something like that, and you bring something outside the textbook, like real life experience into play, like a current event and so on, and you don't use names, I feel like that's okay. Maybe, and I know what he said today is maybe in hindsight to the Business Journal or whatever the interview was that he did with Harvard. I know he said maybe I'd walk it back and maybe not discuss that again. Okay, fine. But so piece 1 is Gio is, you may not see him play for the national team. I think you probably will, because whoever is the manager / next manager, which is another point that I'm sure we'll get to in a second, probably going to have ironically, that coercion pressure, I don't play this kid, and putting aside that he's probably one of the 3 or 4 best talents in our talent pool right now.
Yeah.
To be fair, if not better, when he's healthy, asterisk. So, I mean, he might get a pass, but there's going to be problems for him leaving Dortmund and going somewhere else for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we'll definitely have to, keep our eyes on, just because, now, again, if it's not the kid, that's going to, the kid's going to get the brunt of this. That's exactly what's going to happen, especially too, that it's the chances are good, obviously, that, this was something that was resolved long time ago, 92. Ian and Tom, both of you were born, myself and Mike were not. There's a lot of things that have gone on then that, were resolved now, but, it's a lot of crazy stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Emberley. Tom, we don't mean to cut you off. We do have to roll, though, just as we're coming up to the 2-hour mark here on our show. Tom, thank you so much for coming on here tonight, my friend. Really appreciate it. And we'd love to have you back on here.
I'm going to pull Kanye. I'm going to let you finish. Kanye style. The only other thing I would say in terms of him as a coach going forward is now the U.S. Federation's hand is forced. Because if you keep him under the same premise we just had of this was 3 decades ago, was probably solved at Carolina, moved on, you will have every human rights group on the Federation's tuchus. And the Court of Public Opinion has already spoken. To go a step further, and I'm sure Mike can relate to this as a fan, think of any American name who would be of substance to take over if it's not Greg, Sharon DeLow, Marsh, Curtin, you name it. Can you trust the Federation? Can you trust people? Can you trust someone who played 120-ish caps for your country? Probably the best captain in your team's history.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't like the answer mommy gave you, so now you're going to go ask daddy? Like, what do we do?
There was already controversy of how Berhalter was hired initially, and now,
who's going to want the job if it's not him? Like, if you're going to get rid of somebody, you need to have a plan as a business person, no matter what job, field, etc. You don't have a plan B right now. And now that this is all going down, to be honest, like it's hard enough to be like the man to replace the man or whatever the case is. And I know there's debate about whether Greg is the man. Like, if you're going to get rid of somebody based on expectations on, off the field, the bloody pitch, whatever you want to call it, that's fine. That's business. Now, judgment's clouded. Cindy Parlow, no shot. No shot. Yeah. So that's my mic drop moment, boys.
Tom, thank you so much for coming on, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Director of Sports Information over at Farmingdale State College, SUNY Farmingdale. Tom, thank you so much. And like I said, we'd love to have you back on for sure. Absolutely. Anytime you'd like to come back on, please, you're more than welcome.
Always a pleasure. Get your popcorn ready next time.
We definitely will. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Emberley, really good stuff there, and obviously went into further detail there with FIFA and and everything going around there with U.S. men's national team. But because we have run out of time, though, guys, we're going to go right into our kudos, and we'll talk about a few things that we didn't get to talk about this week, next week. So, Ian, let's go right to you for your kudos. You're muted, Ian.
Apologies, gentlemen. Apologies. But I was really going to, prior to Monday night, I was going to really put a joke out there about the fact that Pete Rose placed the first official bet in the state of Ohio with legalized sports gambling. But to me, my kudos go to DeMar Hamlin. I think really just in the grand scheme of things, in the bigger picture of life, to see this man fighting for his life and just to go out there and be happy to put on a jersey with his name on it and a helmet and go out there and play the game he loves and nearly had the game take his life away. It just really puts a lot of things in perspective in life, and just really my kudos go to him on a hopefully what seems to be an incredible recovery, and hopefully he keeps it up.
Mike, your kudos goes to?
It will go back. We'll take it back because since we haven't had the show in a while, I still will want to give some props to them, and that was Argentina for winning the World Cup. So take things back to that point. Congrats to them for great tournament. My guy Lionel Messi, as we all know in this group chat, for finally getting the elusive World Cup trophy there. Hats off to them to a great tournament and winning the World Cup down in Qatar.
My kudos goes to the University of Texas for firing Chris Beard. We do not condone domestic violence. Difference between Greg Berhalter and Chris Beard is that Chris Beard is a lot older than Berhalter. And whether it happened or not, we don't condone it. And I think that there's a lot of chatter that it looks like it did happen. It's not a good situation over there. With Chris Beard, and at one point he was a Final Four, a national championship coach with Texas Tech, and he got the job the year later over at Texas. And here's the downfall. My kudos goes to University of Texas for shedding the fat now while you can, and being able to start fresh this year. So, yeah, my happy trails, if you will, as Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser would say, happy trails to Chris Beard. May you never see the floor ever again. Ladies and gentlemen, my final portion, of course, goes to the Essential Wrestling Podcast because they have their show coming up on Tuesday. Be sure to subscribe to them by searching the Essential Wrestling Podcast on the Eastern Observer on YouTube, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, and iHeartRadio. Be sure to subscribe to them. In addition, of course, subscribe to us by searching the Primetime Rundown on the same exact platforms as well. Odyssey, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you want to see all of our beautiful faces, please search Eastern Observer on YouTube. So it's been a really fun time, ladies and gentlemen. And not only that, too, we are extremely grateful that our friend Ian Schraier is back with us and back and better than ever, as they say. Next Friday night, episode number 106 comes your way live right here on the Eastern Observer from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For Ian Schraier, Mike Szabo, and for all of us here at the Blackjack Media Group, Joey Jarzynka saying Happy New Year, and we will see you all next Friday night right here on the Primetime Rundown.